What's up, guys? Jim here, DJ Envision, coming at you from unityofnoise.com, here to provide you with a tutorial on how to grid a transition track so that your beat grid will follow the transition from the original tempo, this being 130, to the tempo that the transition track ends at, this being 106. So this track, I have a cue point here set at the beginning, starts at 130. Now, I want to point out that right here, Serato thinks this track is at 106. This definitely happens when the majority of the song is one tempo versus the other section of the song that you're transitioning from is a small section of the song. For instance, this song is 130 beats per minute, but it's only for the first, 60 seconds of the song or so, maybe a minute and a half of the song, versus the other 3.5 to 4 minutes of the song is at 106. So when Serato read and analyzed this track, it thought that the track was 106 because that was the majority of the track. If you were DJing and not really thinking about the fact that your track had transitioned up or down, and you just went to set a loop to mix this loop into your next track, suddenly you get shoes in a dryer, and suddenly everyone thinks that you're a horrible DJ, and nobody wants that to happen. So what is super awesome about Serato DJ and now Serato DJ Pro is that you can actually use the beat grids on these tracks to transition down with the track. So when the track starts at 130, your loops at 130 will be good. And then when it transitions down to the second tempo, your loop will still be good, still be on point, and you won't have any shoes in a dryer. All right, so first of all, bit of a disclaimer, you have to turn on sync and preferences. The point of this is you're not actually using sync, you're not DJing with sync. All you're doing is turning the sync on so that way you can use the beat grid to create the transition that goes down, allowing the tempo in Serato to go down and or up depending on the type of transition you're using. And so your loops at the end of the day, both at the beginning of the song and at the end of the song, will always be exactly what they are supposed to be. So we go into our preferences, and then under DJ preferences, which is the very first option in both Serato DJ and Serato DJ Pro, this is exactly the same. Under sync mode down here, you've got simple sync. You could turn this on, make sure snap to beat grid is on. You don't have to worry about maintaining sync on track load if you don't want to do that. That's not necessary for this. We go back to our track, and then we have this guy right here that says edit grid. Okay. Now there's two ways you can turn the grid edit on. You can turn this switch on and off. As you can see, the whole track gets highlighted in blue. That's how you know that you're editing the grid. Or you can hold option and hit the space bar. Option, space bar, option, space bar. Turns editing grid on and off. Now, you have different markers when editing your grids. You have a set marker, which is the main red marker. So I'll click that right now, and you can see it leaves a red line. That's your main set marker. That's the very first marker and the marker that you use to go through the track to tell the grid where that downbeat is or the one is, depending on how you want to think about it. So at the beginning, what we do is we find our very first beat. At this point, I already have the cue point set here. So then we hit X on our keyboard, or you can hit set on the computer here. I find that using keyboard shortcuts is way better. They call them shortcuts for a reason. So I hit X, and then we basically play the track and make sure that these lines, 1 is where we're at, 2, 3, 4, etc., they all line up at that 130 beats per minute. Now, because Serato thinks this tempo is 106, this is definitely not going to be lined up, so we're going to have to move the grid around. So here we go. All right. So what I'm doing here is two different things. You can adjust the grid using your cursor up here, which is very time consuming and tedious. Adjust minor bits, major bits, really, really minor bits, or, slightly not major bits. Or, in my opinion, the much easier way to do it is to simply hold down Option, then click on the track and drag left and right. So much easier to do that. So now when you listen to your track, all you got to do is start lining up those numbers with where the downbeat is. This is a 4/4 beat, so we're looking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. Here we go. 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. Now what I'll do is I'll use hold shift and use my arrow keys left and right to fine tune this. And then you can let go of shift and use your arrow keys left and right to really fine-tune it. Once again, that's shift left and right for major fine-tuning, unshift, or just arrow keys left and right by themselves to minor fine-tune. So our tempo up here says 130, which is what the track says it starts at. And our grid looks like it's on 24, 2, 3, 4, 25, 2, 3, 4, 26, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. So now we have the grid on at the beginning of the track. So if we were to set a loop, I have to turn the beat grid off to set a loop. But if we were to set a loop and play this track, it should loop perfectly, unlike it did before. There you go. You got your beat grid at the beginning of your song lined up. Time to move on to the transition area. Now, this is where those keyboard shortcuts really come in handy. So once again, let's turn that beat grid on. Options, spacebar. And we're going to find the transition area in our song. You already know it's right about here. So we listen to the track, listen to the transition. You can hear the track slowing down right here. So that's the beginning of the new section of the song. Now this should be at 106, but again, Serato thinks that we're at 130. So this is where that problem comes into play. This track was like this, and you were DJing live, and let's just say you were going to mix out of a section or something right here. And you were like, okay, cool, here comes that part. And you're just DJing away, and you decide to set a 4-beat loop. Boom. Oh, no. Yeah, that's not good. Shoes in a dryer. The point being, let's get this track to transition down, so this tempo, where it says 130, will actually be 106. It'll say 106, and our loops will be on point. So let's go back to where the beginning of our transition was, which is right here. This is the start of it. Okay, so that's the downbeat. That 49 right there is the downbeat. So first things first, we want to set our grid marker. We got to option spacebar, turn our grid back on. Set our grid marker either by clicking set or by hitting the X. Now, I'm telling you right now, that X shortcut key is going to save you drastic time right now. Now, what you want to do is you want to follow this transition down. And every time that 1 comes around, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, as it's slowing down, you want to push that X right where you would think 1 is. And that's going to stretch that grid out and start slowing down the tempo of the grid on the song as the song is slowing down. So we'll listen along and set our grid as we go. Once again, I'm pushing the X key. Here's our start. 1, 2, 3, 4. One thing to make note of as I'm doing this is that the grid is getting farther and farther apart. Here's the boom. So it's pretty close. That's the first beat of the new section. That's the second beat of the new section, and as you can see, our grid is not too far off, but if we left it there, it thinks the tempo is 112 right now, so it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So now what we want to do is just fine-tune this and make it line up. So here's our 1. Right now, I'm option, click, drag. Then I'm going to use my arrow keys on my keyboard left and right to scoot the track forward and backwards and just fine tune it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 2, 3, 4. Looks like it's pretty on. And just to double check this, now a lot of times you get this grid on right here and it's pretty close to that main set marker. But when you go to the end of the track, it might still be off by a little bit. You might need to fine-tune a little bit. So once I get it on around this point in time, I jump to the end of the song, and I take a listen again and look and see. It looks like it's off right there. You can tell it looks like it's off from that beat. And that's 1, 2, 3. So it's a little bit off. So I can hold shift and use the arrow keys left and right to adjust that grid. And then again, let go of shift and use arrow keys left and right just to really fine tune it. And we've got it on, and now that grid is set on the end of the track. So we're going to click the save button right here. So now we're at the end of the song. If we set a 2-bar loop right here, boom, our transition track is now completely transitioned on the grid. Our loops both happen at the beginning of the song and the end of the song with no issues, and you won't have to worry about it screwing up your whole mix. Once again, this is Jim, DJ Envision, coming at you from unityofnoise.com. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Please hit that subscribe button. Cheers.